Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's last post ceremony. My name is Dan Hiscock, and joining us today from the Royal Australian Air Force is Group Captain Paul Dighton. Animals have been put to many uses in war, serving as transport, beasts of burden, messengers, protectors, mascots and pets. They have played an important part in all wars in which Australians have been involved. Famously, of 136,000 Australian horses sent to the First World War, only one returned. After General Bridges died in May 1915 from a wound sustained at Gallipoli, his favourite horse, Sandy, returned to Australia, eventually finding a home at the Australian War Memorial. While the donkey made famous by Simpson is perhaps the best known example of a beast of burden, mules were in constant demand to carry supplies to the front line. The Camel Corps was formed in the early years of the First World War. By late 1917, the Desert Mounted Corps had some 6,000 camels. The homing ability and navigational skills of carrier pigeons saw them used during the First and Second World Wars. Some were even awarded medals for gallantry. Working dogs were used by the Royal Australian Engineers in 1918, with sappers handling messenger dogs in the trenches of France. Search dogs were used from 1944 after the raising of the first Australian dog platoon. Mine detection and scout dogs were used in Korea and Vietnam, and explosive detection dogs were used to counter the threat of improvised explosive devices in Afghanistan. During the First World War, many Australians brought animals from home to the training camps in Egypt. When the war ended, they were donated to the Cairo Zoo. As late as the 1950s, it was said to have had the largest collection of Australian native animals outside of Australia. Since then, a selection of dogs, cats, goats, possums, rams, eagles, monkeys, turtles, and many more have acted as formal or informal mascots for Australian units. Today, on the National Day for War Animals in Australia, we commemorate the deeds and sacrifices of animals in war. This evening we are honoured to acknowledge Lieutenant General Melvin Ong Soo Kiat, Chief of Defence Force, Singapore Armed Forces, accompanied by General Angus Campbell, Chief of Defence Force, Australia. The Royal Norwegian Ministry of Defence delegation, accompanied by Her Excellency Miss Anna Greta Reza, Ambassador of Norway. We also warmly welcome Mr John King, President of the Returned and Services League of Australia, ACT branch, and the delegation of graduates of the Defence Learning Branch, Department of Defence. As always, we warmly welcome the veterans who have served, those still serving, and the families that love and support them. The live stream of this ceremony is made possible by the Returned and Services League of Australia and the RSL and Service Clubs Association. We welcome members who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the pool of reflection by visitors to the memorial. If you're able, please stand and join in singing the national anthem.
Soil and wealth for toil, our home is
The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 103,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the pool of reflection.
Today we remember and pay tribute to Lance Corporal Charles Willoughby Weston. Charles Weston was born on the 16th of January 1884 in Porepunkah, Victoria. Known as Charlie, he was one of 12 children born to farmer William Henry Weston and his wife Susan. Charlie received his education at the local state school and developed a passion for horses at an early age. As a young adult, he moved to Queensland, where he worked on a variety of outback cattle stations. He volunteered in Queensland's Light Horse Militia and gained a reputation as a talented horseman. When the First World War broke out in 1914, Charlie was working as a horsebreaker at a breeding station in Queensland. Charlie Weston was quick to volunteer for the Australian Imperial Force, but was initially rejected owing to an injury to his right hand. He remained persistent, however, and was accepted for service on the 23rd of October 1916. He was assigned to the 8th Light Horse Regiment before being transferred to his home state of Victoria. There, he married his longtime sweetheart, Laura Teresa Shepherd, on the 24th of November before continuing his training. He embarked for active service on the 31st of January 1917, sailing from Melbourne on the troop ship Anglo-Egyptian. Trooper Weston disembarked in Egypt in early March and proceeded to camp with the rest of the reinforcements. In April, he was called upon for his expertise with animals, transferred to the Australian Veterinary Corps. From there, he was assigned to the newly formed 9th Mobile Veterinary Section, which had been established as a result of the significant increase of horses and other animals used in the Middle East theatre. It was comprised of men like Charlie Weston, who had been brought in from other units to meet the Veterinary Corps' need for additional manpower. The mobile veterinary sections provided frontline care for animals needing immediate medical aid resulting either from sickness or from their wounds in battle. These sections acted as casualty clearing stations for animals, treating them before evacuating them to larger veterinary hospitals. They also assisted with the general well-being of the animals. Attached to the 4th Light Horse Brigade, Weston first saw action with his unit during the brigade's charge at Beersheba in October 1917. The attack required mounted troops to sweep through the town from the east, while infantry attacked from the southwest. Fooling Turkish forces into preparing for another attack on Gaza to the west, the Allied forces successfully broke through enemy lines and occupied Beersheba within a matter of hours. Though the attack was successful, some 70 horses were killed during the charge across open ground. Others that had been wounded were left in the care of Charlie Weston and his comrades. Success at Beersheba paved the way for a third attack on the city of Gaza, which fell to the British on the 7th of November 1917, with little resistance from the Turkish forces. One light horseman who took part in the fighting wrote, "Our horses were in very poor condition at this time, and they were almost done. We would have been able to round up thousands of prisoners if we had been able to get at least a gallop out of our horses. When we watered them at a very small well, they were almost frantic at the sight and had a very long drink after a thirst lasting 57 hours. Shortly after the fall of Gaza, Weston received news that his brother Ernie had died of wounds received while serving with the 4th Light Horse Regiment in Palestine. He broke the news to their father in a letter back home. No doubt by the time this letter reaches you, you will have heard the sad news that poor Ernie died of wounds. He lived 4 days after he got shot through the head. He was wounded, and his mate, poor old Bill McIntosh, ran to get a stretcher for him. Just as he picked it up, a sniper got Bill also. He died the next day. It was a very sad ending. I saw Ernie the day before he went out, on the 27th of November. He came to the vet section to see me. I was out, but met him coming back. I have been worried and very much upset over his death. I had seen a good bit of him lately. He looked the picture of health. Nearly all the original men are dead or have been invalided home. Until now, there are only 2 left in Ernie's lot. Weston continued caring for his brigade's animals through the raid at Es Salt between April and May 1918, and during defensive postings on the west bank of the Jordan River. He was promoted to Lance Corporal in September and soon after contracted malaria. Like many of his comrades, he also suffered from bouts of dysentery. By the time the Allies had taken the city of Damascus in October 1918, Weston had become increasingly sick and had progressively weakened after months of illness. His comrades eventually persuaded him to go to hospital, and he was taken there by ambulance later that month. He remained in a French hospital in Damascus, where he was found also to be suffering from pneumonia. On the 24th of October, he was moved to a casualty clearing station at Moalaka, from where he was to be invalided to a larger hospital in Beirut. There, his condition gradually declined until nothing more could be done for him. He died on the 28th of October 1918. A comrade who had served with him in the veterinary section wrote of him after his death. "I knew him as a comrade and not as a personal friend. However, I was the gainer by this meeting, for he was a man in every sense of the word. His principles were high, his kindness and jovial manner won him a host of friends, and his devotion to duty was never questioned. The last time I saw him alive was when he walked with assistance to the Red Cross ambulance car to take him to hospital. I bade him goodbye in the car, and although he was very weak, I felt by the grip of his hand that he intended to pull through, come what may. It was hard luck losing him, but doubly so when the war was so close to an end." Charlie Weston was buried at Beirut War Cemetery in Lebanon, where his remains lie beneath the inscription chosen by his family, "Peace, perfect peace." Charlie Weston was 38 years old. His name is listed on the Roll of Honour on my right among almost 62,000 Australians who died while serving in the First World War. His photograph is displayed today by the Pool of Reflection. This is but one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Lance Corporal Charles Willoughby Weston, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the ode and sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
Lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We'll leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozières or in the low scrub of Gallipoli, with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the last post ceremony. On behalf of the Director, staff and volunteers, thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial today and for your continued support of the Memorial's development project. We wish you all a very pleasant evening. Thank you.